Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Syracuse Sports. My name is Brent Axe, and I am excited about this edition. It is our second Axe Brent Anything episode. All your questions and all from our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Yet another benefit of being a Syracuse Sports Insider. You can get direct text access to me anytime you want. Your questions, your comments, your thoughts, your opinions on all matter of Syracuse sports. Any breaking news that I have, you get it first. Any opinions and insight that I have, you get it first. And that back and forth text exchange during games and just whatever's on your mind. And I'll let you know a little secret. You don't have to text me about Syracuse sports exclusively. It's NFL draft day as I record this. You want to talk draft? You want to talk other things happening? NBA playoffs, hockey playoffs? I'm game for it, as is going to be the theme of this podcast. Every question I'm about to go over, and boy, you guys brought it. Man, this is kind of like Star Wars was great, but The Empire Strikes Back was better. The questions that you have asked for this second edition of Axe Brent Anything, they're awesome because you guys are awesome. And being a Syracuse Sports Insider is that's why it's so exciting. So text the word orange to 315-847-3895. You could try it free for 2 weeks, and then it's just $3.99 a month after that. Less than $1 a week for all of that and more. We're planning on some big stuff for you guys for the near future for Syracuse Sports Insiders as well. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it because your questions were fantastic. And we're going to start with Mark F., who says, Brent, is Fran Brown over-promising with NIL? He may or may not have, or is SU in much better shape than many of us think? What's the deal with that? Yeah, the transfer portal is just going bonkers. Justice Ross Simmons, wide receiver from Colorado State, a Rochester native, right? Savion Washington, offensive tackle from Colorado just this week. Syracuse already has nearly 20 commitments in the class of 2025. Every day it feels like we're getting 2, 3, 4 more commitments for Syracuse football. Mark, to answer your question, it is more that there is more money there. You have some alums that have stepped up and donated that for whatever reasons, and we have heard some of those from these alums themselves, were turned off by Dino Babers. We're not welcome around the program under Dino Babers, and they have stepped up. So you have the main collective, the preferred collective of Syracuse, Orange United, which frankly doesn't have the money to pay all of these guys, right? But you have Athletes Who Care, which is the collective where Syracuse players, student athletes do charity work in exchange for NIL money. You have the new Syracuse football NIL, and they have already signed up a lot of big names. Kyle McCord, Fidel Diggs included. Money is coming from there. There's more money coming in, as mentioned, from alums, not only that played football, but that for whatever reasons were turned off. I mean, Fran Brown has just reignited this thing, and more people are in. There's a buzz. There's a feeling around this, and that's where it's coming from. Is he over-promising at this point? That's a fair question. I don't think he would do that. You don't want to overpromise, particularly when it comes to money, if it's not there. But I think it's a combination of he knows what money is there, what money is coming in, and what money he thinks he can get, particularly what he keeps bringing in players. So I don't think they're writing a check that they can't cash in that sense, but I also do think they're counting on more people coming back, more alums coming back, what has been promised that people are going to do, and literally what is out there now, that new SU football collective, SU football NIL. It's going to be one to watch going forward. Joe Burton, former player, is the head of it. Justin Pugh is on the board of that. A couple other Syracuse football players are on the board of that. Former 44, Rob Conrad, the last 44, was pretty active in promoting that on social media recently. So something to keep an eye on, and a great question. Frank S., are we finally seeing the rebirth of all the benchmark programs, football, basketball, and lacrosse? A terrific question from Frankie. It wasn't too long ago that Syracuse saw its worst stretch with those three sports since 1983. And when you go back and look at what happened post-1983, the SU men's lacrosse program became a dynasty. All the Final Fours, multiple national championships. The Gate brothers come in 1988, amongst several other players that we could list here, and really turned things around for Syracuse lacrosse. Of course, Dick McPherson and Syracuse football in 1984, they beat number 1 Nebraska. Soon afterwards, an undefeated season in 87. And from 87 to about 2004, crossing over between Coach Mack and Paul Pasqualoni, a run of bowl games, national rankings for Syracuse football, bowl games every year for Syracuse football, prominent players, the McNabb era, the Freeney era. Donnie McPherson almost wins the Heisman. I could go through all the names. Marvin Harrison in there. And in basketball, it spoke for itself. Now, at that time, remember, women's basketball really struggled at Syracuse at the time. But let's look at this. Football is obviously undergoing a revival. They got to prove it on the field. But the recruits that we're seeing come in, the transfers that we're seeing come in, this is unprecedented for Syracuse football. To see them in the top 10 in the rankings for recruiting, we have not seen that ever since these recruiting rankings started. Men's basketball, they won 20 games last year. Despite all the issues that were there, I think there's going to be pressure on Adrian Autry to get this team to the NCAA tournament because you can't go 3 years in Syracuse, New York without making the tournament. But the transfers that they have brought in, Donnie Freeman comes in as one of the top 6 recruits in the country. The expectations are there. The buildup is there. The hype is there. Women's basketball speaks for itself. Felicia Leggett-Jack has turned the program around from a horrible scandal, a horrible situation with Coach Q. In just 2 years, they have shown tangible progress going from the NIT in year 1 to the NCAA tournament in year 2. So you check that box. Men's lacrosse is going to be back in the tournament this year and has the talent to make a run. And the women's lacrosse program speaks for the success there, having been in the national championship game a couple of years ago, in the Final Four a year ago, and number 1 seed in the ACC tournament, ACC regular season champions this year. It's like that scene from Major League, right? There's only one thing left to do, win the whole effing thing. That's women's lacrosse. I'm going to throw men's soccer in there too. Let's not forget a national championship program and a stellar program under Coach McIntyre and company. So, Frank, I think the answer is yes. We are seeing the rebirth of all the major programs at Syracuse, and we'll give we'll give soccer a little love there too. From Madden Cuse, if it came down to it, and it was either Syracuse winning a natty or Buffalo winning the Super Bowl, which one would you pick? Oh, Madden Cuse. I got my Bills sweatshirt on here. It's draft day. Look, I've been a Bills fan since I was 3 years old. It was growing up in Syracuse, New York, of course, going to all those games as a kid. But Bills football was actually my first love. It was actually the thing that really got me into sports. And having gone through the 4 Super Bowls and knowing what it would mean to Bills fans just to get just one Super Bowl before we die. That being said, I am going to say the football national championship. Having seen what that basketball national championship did in 2003 for this community, the memories it still invokes 20 years later. Like, we did that Will to Win documentary. Mike Waters and company just did an amazing job with that, an award-winning production. And watching that and reliving those memories and what it meant to this community that they won a basketball national championship. If that could happen in football, an entire generations, multiple, since Syracuse's last football title in 1959, came close in 87 with the undefeated season, and they determined the national champion by polls and kind of a ridiculous system back then. Knowing what that would do for this community, not only here in central New York, but the Syracuse community, the fans all across the world, I'll pick that. It'd be pretty darn good if the Bills won the Super Bowl too. Rich has a question here. What does a preferred walk-on mean? It seems to only apply to football. Rich, good question. Preferred walk-on basically means that Syracuse football wants to put you on scholarship. They just can't right now. It's kind of like, hang with me. We like you. We want you on the team. We want you around. I just don't have a scholarship for you, but we think enough of you to put you on this team, and we'll get you. Typically, preferred walk-ons eventually become scholarship players. They're just kind of right on that line, and the coaching staff needs to save scholarship for other players. Like Syracuse is right on the line right now. I mean, it's great that all these transfers are coming in, the recruiting classes, but you guys have asked a lot of fair questions about, well, what are the scholarship numbers for this team? They are right on the line of 85 scholarships at this point. So preferred walk-on is basically like, we like you, kid. We just can't give you a scholarship right now. Willie says, Brent, who do you think will be the next person who has played for Syracuse that will win an NBA final? This is a spectacular question, Willie, because the list of former Syracuse players that went to the NBA and won a championship is really short. Marty Burns with the Lakers, Dion Waiters. Those are the last guys to do it, those two. It is not a long list of players that have come out of Syracuse and won a NBA title, but I think the answer is pretty obvious. Should he stick there? And should the Celtics do what they're supposed to do this year? Our man O'Shea Brissett on the Celtics roster, he will become the next Syracuse player to win an NBA title. From Micah, who do you think is under more pressure next year? Fran Brown, who has done a lot of talking and, of course, a lot of recruiting, or Red Autry, who is in a tournament or bust situation? Micah, I don't think it's any question it's Red Autry. I said it a minute ago. You cannot go 3 straight years and not make the NCAA tournament in Syracuse, New York. Autry says it himself, the Orange Standard. And I understand Orange Standard can stand for a lot of things. How players act in public, how they play the game. That can apply to a lot of things. That's why I think it's actually a pretty cool standard, if you will, that Autry has set. And I like that that's the mantra of Syracuse basketball these days. But Fran Brown, are you kidding me? He is going to be on an extended honeymoon. It takes a couple of years for a coach typically to build up a program anyway. He's had a lot of success in recruiting and everything, but he's got to prove it on the field, right? You've got to give him time. If you ask for change, and I said this throughout last year when Syracuse was seemingly looking like they were going to fire Dino Babers. What's the plan? How do you move forward? It's just not as simple as fire a coach and everything will fix itself, right? Syracuse certainly has seemed to find the right coach and the right coaching staff to go with Fran Brown. They have to prove it on the field, right? But there's not pressure there. There's a little bit of pressure because of the transfer portal. You're only going to have Kyle McCord for a year and just the pressure of college sports in and of itself, right? But there is absolutely more pressure on Autry, particularly with the moves they have made. They have improved through the portal by bringing in Eddie Lampkin, by bringing in Jair Davis, by bringing in Carlos, the guard from Hofstra. As we speak, Syracuse does not have Dakota LeFew on the roster. I think they will eventually. The improvements they've made, we mentioned Freeman coming in as a recruit, Elijah Moore as a recruit, the natural progression we'll see from the returning players like J.J. Starling and company. That team's got to make the tournament last year. That's pressure, and that's the pressure you set for yourself. That is the Orange Standard. From Cody, who says Jordan or LeBron, with a nice laugh emoji there. Look, you're talking to a kid who grew up in the 80s, came of age in the 90s. I saw the whole Jordan thing from start to finish, absorbed all of it. I mean, come on. I'm going to say Jordan. You're not going to get me to say LeBron James. What LeBron James has done is absolutely phenomenal. He is, for this generation, he's their Jordan, and he's going to go down as one of the greats. He's in the GOAT conversation. I will take nothing away from LeBron James, right? But Jordan did something. It's not just how he played the game. It's not just the records that he set, that he never lost an NBA Finals. People forget how awesome of a defensive player Jordan was, the all-around game. When you put into the conversation how he changed sports, not just his sport, how he changed how an athlete is marketed in sports, the impact that he made there, and the story, if you saw the movie on Amazon with Matt Damon, it was called Air, right? The story of how Nike got Michael Jordan. Great movie, very entertaining movie. But think about how different the world was before that. Michael Jordan changed the world. I don't know if you can say that about LeBron James, but basketball-wise, if I'm picking between the two, give me Air Jordan, baby. Mark, do you support SU and Siena splitting the arena in Albany for a game? Mark, that is a spectacular question. Of course, Jerry McNamara, Arenziano Waku, Ryan Blackwell, now on that staff with Jerry McNamara at Siena. I support that 125%. Why wouldn't you do that? Now, if you're Syracuse, Jim Boeheim never liked to do this. Like, they played a game in Rochester. The non-conference schedule with the net rankings and everything is airtight these days. You can't play teams that are going to hurt your net ranking. I understand that. But you can't pack it full of teams in the net 100 or 150. You're inevitably going to play a team or two that's outside that ranking. This is regional. Syracuse is such a brand throughout the state, right? Go to Albany. Split the arena, right? Half Syracuse, half Albany fans. I hate to say it for GMAC and Siena. There's going to be more Syracuse fans at that game. There's just more Syracuse fans in the state. Why not, right? These non-conference games, I mean, they play the Maui Classic. They go to MSG or Brooklyn once a year. You've got the Georgetown series. I'm all for making non-conference games more interesting. And I'm all for a cool trip like that. What a great thing to do for your, I'm telling you, a huge fan base that's out there in the Albany area. Think of when Joe Girard came in from Glens Falls and all the fans that came to see him. That would be an amazing idea. I am 125% behind it. And Mark, I'm glad that you suggested it. Brian, what is the rationale for signing so many non-ranked football players, given that Coach Brown and Coach Robinson are among the top recruiters in the country? And I would add Nick Williams to that list as well, who's Syracuse's edge coach. By the way, I know these questions are kind of random and all over the place, but that's how I put them in. No rhyme or reason to it. I wanted them to be random, jump around, different sports, different questions, back to football, back to basketball. Why not? Brian, I think the answer to that question is they know what they're looking for. There's a certain type that they have been recruiting. Syracuse's roster is noticeably bigger. It is noticeably faster already. The type of recruits that they're bringing in, look at Yassine Willis, my guy, the running back, thunder and lightning with LaQuint Allen, 6'1", 227. They bring in Deion Wilson Jr. They call him the Tank, right? Darius Weatherspoon, Big Spoon is his nickname, 335 pounds. There is a type they're going for, and it is not how many stars they have next to their name. Syracuse has upped their 4-star count. Their rankings are higher. Now, you got to keep in mind, you get credit in recruiting rankings simply by how many recruits you have. So one of the big reasons why Syracuse currently is in the top 10 in recruiting is they have 18 commitments as we speak. It's probably going to be more by the time this podcast comes out, right? At the rate Fran Brown's going. They know the type they are looking for, the connections. Look at all the Camden Jersey guys, not only through the portal, but recruiting. I trust them. I trust what they've done in the past. I trust their methods. You can't get swept up in 4 and 5 stars again, even though more of those players are on Syracuse's radar and thinking about Syracuse. I think you have to put your trust in what these coaches do, and there's a reason that those 3 names, 2 of which you noted, are considered some of the best recruiters in the country. From Kate. Kate has 2 questions. Here's question number 1. What made you want to get into the sports broadcasting radio news profession? You know, it's funny, Kate. When I was a kid, I watched SportsCenter every morning, and this was back in the day when they would run the same SportsCenter in the morning from the night before. All throughout the morning, I would get up and watch that, sometimes twice. I was the kid that was bringing the post-standard sports section to homeroom from middle school on. I was always a huge sports fan, went to so many games with my dad at the Dome. It didn't really occur to me that this was like, I always loved Costas and Chris Berman and Doug Logan, the voice of the Orange back in the day. It just never occurred to me that I could actually do this for a living until late in high school. And I had interned at Z89 doing sports shows, working on some things. But to me, it almost felt like it was like the school club, right? It didn't really ring to me that you could do this for a living until I started looking at colleges. And I remember picking my major. Shout out to Herkimer County Community College. Radio, television, broadcasting. I go to Herkimer, I visit, and I'm talking to my professors, and they're showing me the student radio station and kind of explaining how this can be a path to a job. And that kind of absorbed with me. So then I'm in my freshman year at Herkimer. Right off the bat, I get an internship at WIBX Radio, right? My friend Gary had the internship. He wasn't as big of a sports fan as I was, so he basically traded internships with me. And I go to this radio station, and a guy who is a dear friend of mine to this day, Brad Davies, he's doing a show. Now, keep in mind, this is 1996. Okay, sports talk radio is in its infancy at this point. and he's yelling about a Dallas Cowboys New York Giants football game. And Kate, I knew in that moment, I said, I have to do this. The fact that this guy could sit in this room and talk that passionately about football, I had to do it. I knew in that moment, like, this is what I want to do for a living. I hadn't really been guided towards being a sports writer or TV or like, every kid wanted to be on Sports Center back in the 90s, but the path was not put in front of me until that moment when I walked in that room and heard Brad passionately yelling about that previous Cowboys-Giants game from that weekend. I said, I have to do this. And I've been so fortunate that pretty much since that moment, I've been doing it in some way, shape, or form. Kate's other question is a fun one. Who's the most famous person you've ever met? And to add to it, if you could interview or meet anyone, who would it be? So, Kate, I have had the great fortune to interview so many people in sports, right? Jim Kelly, all the Syracuse athletes that have come through in the past, Carmelo Anthony, Donovan McNabb, who we just had in the pod recently, by the way. Go check that out in the archives. So if you put aside the athletes, the most famous person, not only that I met, but actually got to hang out with for a little bit, is Alice Cooper. So here's a fun story. Same Gary that I mentioned a moment ago calls me one night. Now, Alice Cooper, when he would go on the road doing his concerts, he also would do a radio show, which was syndicated across the country. So whatever city he happened to be in, he would stop in to what affiliate carried a show, and he would record his show moving forward, right? So Gary calls me. He's like, dude, Alice Cooper's here, and he wants to take us out. And I was like, what? Like, just the most random phone call of all time. Like, I wasn't even an Alice Cooper fan. He's like, dude, he wants to take us out. You got to get down here. Get down here. Okay, oh, well, here we go. Now, let's keep something in mind here. It's a Monday night. So just keep that in mind. We'll circle back to that. So I get to the radio station. Alice is done recording a show. He wants to go out. And I'm like, we're going to go out with a freaking rock star. Like, we're going to party all night? Like, what's happening here? Alice Cooper, big movie buff, right? Wants to go to the movies. Okay, yeah, we'll go to the movies. And then, man, we are going to party. So not only do we go to the movies, we go to the crappiest movie I've ever seen in my freaking life, Catwoman. Remember the Catwoman movie with Halle Berry? That movie was so bad. I've not watched it since. I will not watch it since. And I can't believe that I saw the shittiest movie I've ever seen in my life with Alice Cooper. Okay, so struck out. Movie wasn't that good. Hey, why not? But now it's time to party. We're going to party with a rock star. We come out of the movie, and Alice is like, okay, guys. And I'm like, oh. I got an early tea time in the morning, so great to hang out with you. I'll see you next time. But it was fun to hang out with Alice Cooper. We actually did talk golf the whole time. Huge golf. He's like a scratch golfer at the time. He's a little older now. I don't know how good he is these days. But think of Alice Cooper, right? Think of that great scene from Wayne's World, right? Milwaukee, which I believe was Algonquin for the good land, and the great behind-the-scenes thing. I actually experienced that. Like, you think does this guy know how to party or what? We went to a real bad movie, and he went to bed early because he had a tea time the next day. Not the rock star life I envisioned, right? If I could interview anybody, it would be Springsteen. It would absolutely be Bruce Springsteen, just to sit down with him for a half hour and pick his brain. I know he's done a lot of interviews and talked about the albums that he's made, but I'm not going to tell you what they are. But I think I've got a few questions nobody's ever asked him about certain things. He was just here in Syracuse, missed my chance for that. An amazing show. I love that he diverted from the set list, did some different things. And that actually, I didn't plan this. Like I said, these are random. That leads to our next question from Pinch, who says, was the Springsteen concert great or great for his age? I mean, look, it was both. It was an amazing show. I was fortunate to be in the pit right there. I could have thrown a tennis ball at Mr. Springsteen. The fact that that man is 74 years old and he can go 3 hours straight like that and rock the way he does, and not just Bruce, the whole band, right? Some of his band members like Jake Clemens Clarence Clemens' nephew, are younger. But the fact that Stevie and Niels and all these guys are at Bruce's age or around it, and they can still go out there and kill it night in and night out. Max, the way he drums for 3 hours. So the answer is both, Pinch. It's an amazing show, and frankly, you forget how old they are. This was the same thing, by the way. I saw the Rolling Stones in Buffalo, I think it was 4 years ago now, at Highmark Stadium. Mick Jagger, dude's almost 80, running around the stage like he's still 40 years old. Incredible. So fortunate that I got to see these bands that are still around and still killing it. Generational, amazing talents. By the way, the Rolling Stones' new album, Hackney Diamonds, amazing. Pearl Jam's new album, amazing. Right? Bruce, still killing it, still putting it out there. So a lot of great music. A lot of great music from the older generation still. Bill from Florida says, Brent, you've mentioned a few times that you've played lacrosse. When, where, position, your success, contributions to your team. Did you get into coaching for a while? So, Bill, I played lacrosse starting at West Genesee High School, which is, one of the great juggernauts in the history of high school lacrosse, of course, when Mike Masser was there for so long. I played there in middle school. I started at Shove Park here in central New York. I was 7 years old when I started playing lacrosse. Shout out to Jeff Tambroni, who's now the head coach at Penn State, who taught me how to play lacrosse, gave me a good tip. He said, learn how to play left-handed, and your right hand will come naturally, right? So I played all throughout young middle school. 9th grade, I get to West Genesee, and they had combined Camillus Middle School and West Genesee Middle, right? And it was a little overwhelming because I was pretty good in middle school, but to have that combination and see that talent that was there, I don't know if I really would have played that much freshman year at West Genesee. And I was on that freshman team, and I didn't play that much that year. It was humbling to see that combination of talent. Like, whoa, I see what I'm up against here. So for a myriad of reasons, I transferred to Bishop Ludden High School when I was in 10th grade. Now, Ludden did not have the lacrosse program that West Genesee did. They were slightly below average. They struggled to make the sectionals. They had been successful in certain years, but when I was there, we were right on the line, right? We weren't awful, but we weren't great either. We were kind of right in the middle. But I love the school, still do to this day. And I was fortunate when I was at Ludden that in my senior year, I was named an alternate for the Exceptional Senior All-Star Game, right? And I had won some other awards and had been pretty successful in one of the leading scorers in the stats. And I can't remember what league we were in back in 1996. Shout out to Jimmy Egan, who was on the team with me as well, who was also just an amazing player. And so I get named to this All-Star Game as an alternate. And my coach, Rick McCormick, really pushed for that. And I am eternally grateful to him for that. So there's a story within a story here. So I get to this All-Star Game. They played it at Onondaga Central High School. And I'm warming up for the game, right? And a referee comes up to me and goes, son, where's your mouthpiece? My helmet didn't have a mouthpiece on it. He wasn't going to let me play in this game without a mouthpiece. So no one at OCS has a mouthpiece. We looked in the training boxes. It's in the school. They didn't have a mouthpiece. No one had an extra mouthpiece anywhere. We're like a half hour from the game. So thankfully, I didn't live that far from Onondaga Central High School. But here I get in my full lacrosse gear, into my car, drive home, went the speed limit the whole time, come back. I'm literally running back on the field. Didn't warm up or anything as the final notes of the national anthem are playing. And my coach sends me in at midfield. I'm an attackman, okay? I hadn't played midfield in years, but came off the face-off, scoot the ball, go down the field. Somebody pops me. I fell to the ground. I didn't even see the shot, but I score. All right, giddy up. So when I eventually made it back to the sideline, after that, I went to the coach. I'm like, I'm an attackman, right? He said, oh, okay, yeah. And so we worked it out. He put me out at attack. And I just had the game of my life. I scored 5 goals. I had 2 assists. These are against, the best of the best, the senior all-star game, right? So it turns out I become and are named the co-MVP of that game. And Bill, my co-MVP for that game, Ryan Powell. Ryan freaking Powell, who went on to become one of the greatest lacrosse players on the history of the planet. I did not. I went to Herkimer, and look, Herkimer at the time, they were winning national championships left and right. They were the dynasty in junior college lacrosse, which OCC later became, and Chuck Wilbur, a Herkimer guy, turned OCC into that dynasty. And I knew right away, I knew my first semester, I told the story of when I got into radio, that I couldn't play lacrosse anymore. And it was heartbreaking because I wanted to play, but I knew, I'm not going to play lacrosse the rest of my life, but maybe, this broadcasting thing might work out. And for the record, Herkimer never won a national title. I had to go to Herkimer for 3 years, believe it or not, which is a whole story in and of itself. I got mono. It was a whole thing. So I've got other lacrosse stories, but that's one of my favorite ones, was being named as an alternate to that All-Star game. And here I am standing on the same MVP stage with Ryan freaking Powell, right? That's my Al Bundy story. Remember Married with Children, Al Bundy? He scored like 6 touchdowns for Pokai back in the day. Great question, Bill. A few more here from Matthew. This is Dr. Axe. Can you confirm that salt potatoes were in fact invented in the Syracuse area? I can confirm this. Salt potatoes were invented here in Syracuse. Shout out to Bob Searing at the Onondaga Historical Association. He could tell you that story. He's written about it before. He's talked about it before. I believe if you go there, that's a great spot to visit in downtown Syracuse. I believe they have a display about it, or at least the story can be told there. So absolutely, salt potatoes invented right here. Weather's getting warmer. Salt potato season is on the way. Cannot wait for that. From Frankie P, who says, Brent, what's your prediction for Syracuse basketball starting 5? Every time we do this, I get this question. It's a fair one because I think back in Jim Boeheim's day, the starting 5 didn't matter. It was who was in the game when it matters. What we started to see from Autry before injuries, the Benny Williams departure, and he got down to basically a 7-8 man rotation at the end of the year. But I think what we saw before that was Autry wanted to go deeper on his bench, right? So think about what they've brought in. You've brought in Jaquan Carlos from Hofstra. You brought in Jair Davis from Delaware. You've brought in Eddie Lampkin, true center, powerful center, 6'11", 265 from Colorado, right? You've got Donnie Freeman coming in. You've got Elijah Moore coming in. You've got guys coming back like J.J. Starling and Kyle Cuff. And remember, William Patterson still on that roster. Naheem McLeod back from injury. But if I had to take a shot at my starting 5 right now, I'm going to go with this. Chance Westry. Now, that's a big leap of faith considering his injury history. J.J. Starling, Chris Bell, Donnie Freeman, Eddie Lampkin. Now, again, as we record this, Dakota LeFew is not on this roster. I think he will be eventually. So that's why I didn't put him in the starting 5, because technically he's not there yet while I record this. He comes in. That's a changer. Carlos is a pure point guard. He had an amazing assist-to-turnover ratio. I think it was like, I forget the stat right off the top of my head, but it was like 208 assists to 67 turnovers last year. Pass-first guy has come in and basically said, I want to be the quarterback for this team. LeFew is more of an offensive-minded point guard. I don't know about Westry. I don't know enough about Westry to say one way or the other. But I think they believe in this kid. They've stuck with him. He was doing really well before that injury. And don't forget about him in this conversation. But the starting 5 doesn't matter in the sense that LeFew, when he comes, is going to play. Carlos is going to play. Moore is a terrific three-point shooter and is going to play as a freshman. Davis is going to mix in with Freeman, right? So where's the cutoff at that point? We'll have to see. McLeod will spell Lampkin at times. Can Patterson work his way into the rotation? If anything, that's a pretty deep team from top to bottom, and Autry would be wise to mix up that rotation and go 9-10 deep, as he originally wanted to do before injuries and other things set in. Few more questions from you guys here. We start here with Craig, who says, with the NCAA returning the Heisman to Reggie Bush, does that help with Jim Boeheim getting his wins restored? Now, Craig, you got to keep something in mind here. It was not the NCAA that gave Reggie Bush his Heisman back. It was the Heisman Trust. Okay, I'm a Heisman voter. They do their own thing. It's kind of like the Masters. The Heisman Trust, the Heisman organization, they're kind of their own secret club, and they do things the way that they do things, and they do it on their own. So they gave Reggie Bush his Heisman back, not the NCAA. That being said, the fact that Reggie Bush got his Heisman back, hey, NCAA, yeah, give Boeheim those wins back. Give Syracuse lacrosse its national championship trophy back from 1990. Now, these are not the same things. Reggie Bush got that Heisman back because the reason it was taken away is he was basically, there was a story of an agent and $300,000, and the agent that was basically betting on Reggie Bush, giving him this money and some services that he would get back when Reggie Bush went to the NFL, right? That's a standard operating procedure with name, image, and likeness and the money that's flowing in college sports these days. So good on the Heisman Trophy, which is as old school and traditional as it gets, to recognize that and say, you know what, this is ridiculous that we took this trophy away from this guy. Things have changed. But you know what? Things have changed with why they took Boeheim's wins away, which was the dumbest thing to start with. We all saw it. We all saw the wins. Like, what are you doing? It just shows how feckless the NCAA is these days. Go down the list. Who else can get trophies back, wins back? There's going to be a long list of redemption here as the NCAA's power and influence dwindles before our very eyes here. Great question, though, Craig. Now, Lacey's going to finish this off here, and Lacey brought so many great questions that I'm just going to go through them rapid fire here, okay? And shout out to Lacey's boyfriend, by the way. Hi, Brian. Lacey, okay, let's start with this. I don't think you're a Swiftie, but do you have a Swiftie in your life? Yes, unequivocally yes. My daughter, huge Swiftie. Me, I don't hate it. I don't like it. I'll listen to it if it's in the car and my daughter wants to listen to it. Do I have a Taylor Swift on my Spotify? No, don't. I would go to a show. I have nothing against her. I was into the whole Taylor, Travis Kelce thing. I'm just not quite as obsessed as other people are. So the answer from my standpoint is no. Have you hiked any of the high peaks in the Adirondacks? The answer is yes, including the highest, Mount Marcy. That almost killed me. You got to do it. Got to say you hike Marcy. If you're in New York, if you're nearby and you're into hiking, like you got to do Mount Marcy, but whew, that was a tough one. Do you have any hidden talents? I don't think so. I'm pretty good at impressions. I guess it depends on what impression you want me to do. But, God, I can't think of any even off the top of my head that I would do for you. I just kind of do them randomly. But I'll have to do that on another podcast sometime. I'll do some impressions for you guys. And I know there was one more here. There it is. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? My favorite flavor of ice cream is unequivocally mint chocolate chip. Now, I'll get some different flavors once in a while, but the old standby, if I'm eating ice cream, 90% of the time, we're going mint chocolate chip, baby. Which would probably lead you to say, Brent, what's your favorite mint chocolate chip? Turkey Hill. Shout out Perry's, close second. Love Perry's. Buffalo Company. Turkey Hill mint chocolate chip. Perfection. This didn't show up on my screen here, but Lacey also asked me a question. How many chickens would it take to kill a lion? How many chickens would it take to kill a lion? Ah, God, I don't know. 50? Right? I don't even know if that would be enough. 100? You guys ponder that one. I have no idea. That's a hell of a question, though. As were all your questions. Guys, great job. That was so fun. You asked so many great questions. I couldn't get to all of them. So my apologies to the questions I could not get to. I actually saved some of the questions that you guys sent in to do on their own, as their own show. I couldn't do it justice just doing it quickly here in the Axe Brent Anything episode of Syracuse Sports. But thank you so much for your great questions. Thanks for being a Syracuse Sports Insider. All you have to do is text the word orange to 315-847-3895. Try it free for a couple weeks. Text back and forth your questions, your comments, your opinions. Hey, we're getting into the summertime. We can have a little more fun, be a little more creative. I've got some pretty cool topics lined up. Again, some of which have come from you guys that we're going to get into on the podcast, but more transfer news, all those things, the day-to-day stuff that's happening. I'll send it to you first. When I get breaking news, you guys get it first. My opinions, analysis, insight, the back and forth we've been having has been amazing. Hope you can join it. Tell your friends to become a Syracuse Sports Insider. It's just $3.99 a month. Try it free for 2 weeks. You can cancel anytime. That's cool. Some of you have done that. Like, hey, I'll see you back in the fall when football starts again. But where are you going? Right, guys, the train never stops when it comes to being a Syracuse Sports Insider. So we hope you can join today. Thanks for listening and watching this episode of Syracuse Sports. Make sure you're subscribed on all the places you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple. Subscribe to Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube so you get new episodes sent to you whenever they are available. Thanks for hanging with us here on Syracuse Sports, guys. We'll talk to you next time. Amazing job with your questions.